Hello and welcome to the 2022 EBSS Virtual Research Forum, which offers librarians an opportunity to present current research, especially that research which is relevant to librarians in education and behavioral sciences. My name is Julie Sidoni, and I'm the Vice Chair of the EBSS Research Committee, which organizes this event each year. Unfortunately, our committee chair, Tamara Rhodes, was unable to be here today due to a family emergency. In case you are new to EBSS, we are the Education and Behavioral Sciences section of ACRL. Formed in 1968, EBSS has over 900 members, and we are always welcoming new members who are interested in education and behavioral sciences librarianship. With this slide, I'd like to acknowledge this year's research committee: Tamara Rhodes, the chair, Julie Sidoni, me, the vice chair, Diana Ramirez, our secretary, Melissa Cardenas-Dow, and Emily Fornwald. Today's presentations were selected via a competitive open peer review process. During this process, the committee looks for original research that measures or investigates issues of high interest to EBSS librarians. We also evaluate each proposal's research design, analysis, and how education and behavioral sciences librarians consider and articulate how the research they do impacts diverse communities. Regarding time, each presenter will have 10 to 15 minutes to present. We will do both presentations first, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. You are welcome to put any questions that you have along the way in the chat box, but we will wait until the end of both presentations to respond and discuss. And of course, we'll have a link to a feedback survey on the final slide, and I will share that in chat as well. We definitely appreciate any feedback you share with us. Our two presentations today are collaborative systematic review services, high-touch partnerships for evidence synthesis in the behavioral sciences, by J.G. Wynn and Sarah Semborski, and understanding the online librarianship role of EBSS members in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, by Karen N. Reed and Brittany Kester. With that, let's get started with presentation number one.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Jade, and I'm sharing my screen now. And I've broken every rule. I'm going to ask apologies for that in my deck, meaning that the deck is very heavy in text because it's such a short presentation. I really wanted it to be a valuable tool that social science, behavioral sciences librarians and education librarians could use in the future as a roadmap, as we have our professors in these fields increasingly interested in doing evidence synthesis, systematic reviews, and scoping reviews. So I was kind of recruited for this from being associate or assistant dean of instruction, engagement, and assessment at USC for 8 years. In 2019, we really showed a high interest of our social science first, was the first wave we saw professors asking for this service. So we already really had demand established. I didn't need to go out and survey the population and see if this is something they wanted, because they kept emailing us saying they wanted to do these things. So I got together with our health science librarians who have offered this service for decades now, and realized very quickly that it needed to be adapted to fit interdisciplinary and social sciences. And so I went into a strong sense of professional development, and I spent about 6 months doing that. And I put my form up and I started with inquiry meetings, and I'm going to show you the whole process. And Sarah, who is a doctoral candidate in our social work program, was the first to reach out. And I was lucky enough to have someone that actually had done one before as I began developing our procedures and processes. So we really wanted something that was organic, that came from the work that the teams do, because I was new to this. And so we include in our evidence synthesis scoping and systematic review. It's a full service, high touch. It's for faculty, staff, and doctoral students. I learned very quickly that if you don't limit it, you have a lot of undergrads that think they can do one of these for an assignment due next week. So we made the limiter to doctoral students. Our medical campus only does faculty and staff. We made some slight adaptations to the processes. We still follow Pico and Prisma, but we really had to try out some different softwares to find what worked best. And we're aimed at publishing in interdisciplinary or in disciplinary journals versus Cochrane's or Campbell's, where you normally see medical systematic reviews. So I began developing this service just in July 2020. And right now we're offering 2 levels. Our HSC campus is no longer offering full collaborative efforts in evidence synthesis. So they're only offering appointments and consulting and sharing resources, where you can see the long list of the collaborations that we're doing at the UPC campus, which includes a subject expert librarian as a team member. And to build capacity, what we're doing is when a new professor emails me, I reach out to the subject expert and ask them to be part of the team. They have the choice to join me and learn how to do this, or if they're too busy, not, and I will go back to them the next time that I have something in their area. But we really looked at software. We've done a lot of research, and we have such a smooth process. At the current time, I'm running 13 systematic reviews, some with subject experts on them, and some that are just me as the expert librarian. But we are looking to build capacity, so this is a high-touch, full-service program at USC. Some of the differences is I learned very quickly, although Sarah was able to register with Cochrane's, many of the systematic reviews out in social sciences cannot. They just don't fit the mold. So Open Science Forum has become our preferred method, and it's awesome because it integrates with ORCID for our professors. So it really, and it also allows us to store all kinds of supplemental material for reproducibility of our studies that would not normally fit in a disciplinary journal article. So we start with the research questions. I do still follow the PICA and Prisma protocols that are put forth by Cochrane's and Campbell's, but our write-up and our work is tailored to our publication targets. So, and I am going to let Sarah speak. When we did this, we really were focused on her project, and I was asked to do a little broader about the service. So I am going to have her speak at the end, but kind of use an example, her as an example while I go through. So first we had an inquiry meeting where we just talked about what she wanted to do. Is it suitable for collaboration? What kind of team components and commitment that she had? What was her publication and authorship expectations, as is what ours are for being part of the team. We are full team members and authors on the paper. And then I described the process, and I don't like to put people on the spot. So I kind of always leave these meetings with, so now you know what we're capable of. This is something that is or isn't suitable. And if it is suitable, why don't you think about it for a few days and get back to me? And like most of them, they get back to me immediately and say, yes, I want to move forward. So we have a meeting that's called an intake meeting. And I've developed templates and forms for all these things that will be available later in the slides. And we talk about their research questions. We talk about the registration, OSF or JBI specifically, if it's in social work, because they are specific. They're like Cochrane or Campbell's, but just for social work. Then we talk about the document development, and I make us a Google shared drive where I upload all these documents, and we discuss the research question and the refinement of it. I explain what inclusion and exclusion variables are. And then I'm just going to go through these really quickly. Is we have a first team meeting. This is the set of deliverables that I have for that first team meeting. For the second team meeting, we really narrow in on the systematic strategic search and the resources that will be available within the Google shared drive. And we talk about the Zotero as our bibliographic citation software. And I wanted to give you an example of a tracking sheet. Again, I'm making these all available as templates, but as you can see, this is very useful. We have the database. One of the biggest things about the difference between medical and social science systematic reviews are in medicine, we were really only only required to use PubMed or Medline, and maybe a couple other databases that were relevant. I have an occupational therapy one going on, for example. So I made this tracking sheet so we could track our searches, the terms, how many hits we got, the data that was searched, and then an actual link to the resources, because you find out very quickly doing this work that many of our databases have caps. So this allows us to keep track of what we've downloaded or uploaded into Zotero. And I train on Zotero. I train on the Covidence software. So the process follows just like any other medical systematic review would do, except when we get to the data extraction and the quality control, we switch over to Qualtrics. I think we used Covidence with Sarah's, but what we've learned now is really getting at the answers to the research questions. Covidence isn't set up very well for that because it's specifically made for random control trials. So what we've been doing is making a Qualtrics form to do our data extraction and our quality assurance steps. And then these are the final steps. I'm just kind of letting you know where the library is involved, where the librarian is involved and isn't. And like I said, I'm going through them quickly. The slides are dense, but hopefully you can take time later to read them and they'll be helpful if you're someone setting up systematic reviews. The templates and forms, I have an intake form template, the project document, which is what really we use the whole time through to make any changes, but it also gives all the information that the PIs need to register at OSF or JBI, the search tracker, which you saw, and then a database list just so all team members can contribute to that. We have 2,200 databases at USC, and it's up to us to evaluate which ones would or would not be relevant. And then several different charts for publication. The only real notable one I want to mention is that I do make a publication chart for my teams to show them where we're most likely to get published with the journal name, impact factors, that kind of stuff. Have they published systematic reviews before and that type of thing. Here is my LibGuide, and that will also be on the final slide so you can get a lot more information from it. And hopefully that'll be useful to you. I have my alarm going off, and I just wanted to skim through so you could see the variation of projects that we're doing at USC right now. Many in social sciences, but also in fields such as computer science is this team. It's funded by the Department of Defense. I'm doing bioethics and vulnerability that's with the writing program in the School of Medicine and outside institutions. Working with a famous physics professor on the force concept inventory pre-post test and the diversity and bias in it. Disaster response, which is social work, and from both our team at USC and Columbia, and multiracial mental health outcomes. As you can imagine, many of these are taking on topics that have to do with DEIA and anti-racism, as those are such hot topics right now at our campus. Since the service began, I have 3 publications that are full systematic and scoping reviews, and then these presentations that are associated with it, including today's. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Sarah so she can talk about what her experience has been working with me on systematic reviews at USC.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sarah. I am a PhD candidate in the School of Social Work, like Jade said, and I'm a clinical social worker who previously worked in homeless services. So I do a lot of people stuff and sometimes play with data, but so Jade was awesome to work with in understanding like where to go in all of this. It can feel overwhelming and like a huge burden, and you kind of get lost in it. And as she mentioned, I actually did a systematic review before, which also was published. But so like going into this, I was familiar with some of the processes and frameworks. I had used Zotero and Covidence before. I'd done Prisma before, but I also, in the previous experiment, which I called it an experiment because I ended up having to do it over again because we realized at a certain point that we left out a key search term, and we had to go back and literally review so many articles. So I did like double the work, and it was super painful. And so it was smoother, less hiccups. And so, yeah, Jade mentioned all of what she brings to the table. And all of the tools were super helpful in just orienting me and making sure we did everything, crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's, and didn't mess up. So I had to like go back and redo all my work. You can go to the next slide. And I think there was a slide before that. Was it? Nope. Okay. So yeah, I also loved doing this project. I think it's really fun to work cross-disciplinary, and Jade really came to the table with what she had in her expertise, and she like asked a lot of questions of me, and like about like homelessness and understanding like how to search for topics around that, utilizing the language that will actually produce the results we're interested in. And also we got published. So it got published pretty quickly. And that was largely due to the fact that I wasn't like Googling who publishes this type of paper, you know, like, so Jade like brought that, and overall it was a great fun. I had fun because I didn't do the work twice. And Jade was really fun to work with. So.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for that. And there is my email if anybody has any questions, and the link to my LibGuide, which in the process of putting all those templates and forms up for anybody who's interested. So I thank you for your time today, and we'll answer questions after the next session.
Hello and welcome to our presentation. I am Karen Reed with Brittany Kester, and we are representing our research team. We are all EBSS members on the Online Learning Research Committee, and we work together on a multi-year research project. Our research surveyed members of EBSS for their perceptions of their online librarianship role before and after COVID, which we delineated as prior to and after March of 2020. We started our work with an extensive literature review. We found that online librarianship has its origins in distance education, but has since shifted to a more holistic view, which focuses on the technology solutions enabling students to learn in and outside of the physical classroom. The COVID-19 pandemic became a worldwide problem in March 2020. Prior to this time, a range of online librarianship support existed at academic libraries, with some libraries having full-scale programs and others providing very little. For those university libraries already providing these services, they suddenly became essential as universities were thrust into a singular virtual environment in the wake of pandemic-forced lockdowns. Unfortunately, many universities were not prepared to offer a range of online librarianship support. These libraries often faced a steep learning and implementation curve. Research regarding the American response to offering library services in the immediate aftermath of COVID-19 lockdowns reveals two primary concerns: maintaining services and instruction through online sources, and communicating these services to the university campus. The literature regarding the international academic library response to the COVID-19 lockdowns is primarily divided along economic lines. Wealthier nations in Europe, as well as China, mirrored many of the same concerns as the United States, such as maintaining library instruction and services and communicating these services to students and faculty. But in India, Mexico, and some countries in Africa and the Caribbean, libraries scrambled to do their best with limited resources, training, and support services, including limited internet infrastructure. Students often lacked home computers or internet access, and so they relied on their smartphones as their primary device for accessing online content and remote instruction lectures. Consequently, libraries had to adapt by creating smartphone-friendly websites, resources, and instructional content. For this study, we used a convergent mixed methods design in which we collected two different types of data through the same survey instrument, analyzed the data separately, and then compared it to see if the findings supported or disproved each other. We had 4 research questions we wanted to address. Number 1, which specific online librarianship job duties did participants perform prior to March 2020? Number 2, did participants experience a change in specific online librarianship job duties after March 2020, and if so, how? Number 3, did participants perceive any change in their working relationship with faculty after March 2020? And number 4, did participants feel professionally prepared to perform online librarianship job duties after March 2020? We created our survey in Qualtrics, and as this table shows, different survey questions corresponded to different research questions. The survey was designed to target EBSS members through email and on social media. Participants were solicited at the end of February 2021, and the survey was available to participants for 3 weeks. At the end of March 2021, the data was harvested and cleaned, including the removal of personally identifiable information collected by Qualtrics, such as IP addresses. Of the 905 EBSS members, we had 46 people respond, yielding a 5% response rate. And now Brittany Kester will discuss our findings.
So the goal of research question 1, which was which specific online librarianship job duties did participants perform prior to March 2020, was to establish a baseline for work responsibilities for our participants prior to the COVID-19 lockdowns of March 2020. As it turns out, similar common online librarianship responsibilities were performed in the workplace prior to and after the COVID-19 lockdowns. According to the quantitative data, the most common online librarianship tasks completed prior to March 2020 were the creation of LibGuides, individualized research support to students, production of online learning materials, and individualized research support to faculty. This was the same after March 2020 as well. And then according to the qualitative data, the most common online librarianship tasks completed prior to March 2020 were instruction classes and research consultations, creation of online learning objects, creation of LibGuides, and assistance to students via chat, text, and email. For research question 2, which again was, did participants experience a change in specific online librarianship job duties after March 2020? And if so, how? Although the majority of these online librarianship work responsibilities remain the same, many librarians were asked to complete new tasks post-COVID, with the top task being to help faculty members with their online courses. The qualitative data also provided rich descriptive information as to the specific work realities for our participants during this time. It showed that for nearly half of our respondents, their additional job duties were due to reasons such as colleagues leaving the institution because of retirements or new jobs, hiring freezes, and even people that were being let go by their institution, and then the respondents having to take over their job duties. The findings for research question 3, which again was, did participants perceive any change in their working relationship with faculty after March 2020? We used a Likert scale with 7 different questions to measure librarian perceptions of specific transactions with faculty members post-lockdown. Regarding the job duties and tasks, the survey found an increase in faculty asking librarians to assist with providing or creating new learning objects, requesting instructional support, and requesting technology assistance from librarians. Librarians perceived a positive difference in faculty members' opinions of the library during the COVID crisis, as well as a new awareness of what the library can do, resulting in a strengthened connection with faculty and a positive difference in communication between faculty members and the library. And then finally, for research question 4, did participants feel professionally prepared to perform online librarianship job duties after March 2020? An open-ended question was used to answer this research question. 39 participants answered this question with 2/3 feeling professionally prepared and the other 1/3 feeling professionally unprepared. Interestingly, of the 13 unprepared participants, 85% of that group came from four-year colleges or universities with either significant graduate programs or a research-intensive institutional focus. For those who did feel professionally prepared to perform online librarianship tasks post-March 2020, most reported the value of their prior online librarianship work experience, especially having prior experience with online technology tools. For those who did not feel professionally prepared, they cited two main themes, which were lacking training or experience, as well as technology issues such as lack of equipment. And another issue that came up was that there were no library workflows in place to help with the transition to remote work. For our discussions and implications, we had three themes that emerged from the findings, which were online librarianship tasks, librarian perceptions of faculty relationships, and managing expectations in the face of crisis. Our results indicated that prior to March 2020, many librarians had already taken on tasks related to online librarianship, such as creating contents for LibGuides or learning management systems, conducting online individualized research support for both students and faculty, or purchasing electronic materials like ebooks and journal subscriptions. After the lockdowns in March 2020, however, we found that the nature of these work duties did not so much as change as much as the intensity or allocation of the work changed. For the majority of our participants who were doing these tasks prior to March 2020, this increased pace was stressful but achievable. But for those participants who did very little online librarianship prior to March 2020, the shift in workload appears to have been much more difficult. There seemed to be an increased demand for librarian services post-lockdown, helping faculty with things such as creating online learning objects and providing other technical assistance. Perhaps consequently, participants perceived greater levels of professional respect from faculty members in terms of heightened opinions of the library and its services, as well as greater communication. Through this experience, many librarians felt that they now have a better relationship with their disciplinary faculty, which may lead to more collaborations in the future. And although the quantitative findings indicated that our survey participants' job responsibilities largely did not change after March 2020, the qualitative findings provided a more detailed view of workplace expectations for our participants. Specifically, many of our participants described their struggles with additional duties allotted to them upon coworkers leaving, a lack of technology and technical support, and trying to maintain the library culture of saying yes to all outside requests. Several examples from our participants illustrated the difficult situations they were put in due to decisions made by their library administration, such as insufficient staffing or promotion of online educational resources without clear marketing of their limitations. So although librarians have proven to be resilient during this time, the challenge of managing expectations in the workplace has proven to be very important and necessary. Professional burnout has been a documented problem in academic libraries for some time. However, post-COVID, this issue is perhaps even more salient. So this was just a quick snapshot of the research that we did. We've included a citation for our full article in our presentation, which we will have available for you all. And we thank you for your time and welcome your questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Karen and Brittany and to Jade and Sarah for your great presentations and for sharing your recent research projects. Both of them were very informative and interesting. At this point, we do have time for questions. Please put your questions in the chat, or if you'd prefer to unmute yourself, please raise your hand and I will go ahead and call on you. And it looks like we have a question for Jade in the chat. For Jade and Sarah, what is your process for recruiting a subject librarian expert for the systematic review team? And do you also serve as a team member when a subject librarian expert is included?
Well, since we're trying to build capacity and it's a new service, the process right now is I send an email and I say, I have one of your professors. We've already done an intake meeting. I don't reach out to them until I make sure that it is something that's we can collaborate on. And I invite them to be part of the team with me included. And the idea is that they're learning how to do a systematic review with me so that next time that a professor from that discipline reaches out for a systematic review, I email them again and I say, do you feel confident leading this team, or would you like me to be a part of it? So right now I'm on them all, but I have 6 librarians that are on them that will be in the future able to handle them without me being a team member.
And I have a question for Brittany and Karen. You mentioned that a lot of, or many of the librarians who responded to your convergent mixed method survey mentioned how the intensity and allocation of their work changed post March 2022, those who had been doing online librarianship tasks before. Did you ask any questions about what their kind of online librarianship tasks look like now that we're kind of moving to 3 years into the pandemic? Are they experiencing a similar intensity and allocation of time, or are things kind of going back to pre-COVID levels for them, if you ask those questions?
So the survey the survey was posted from February 2021 to March 2021. So it was really just the year after the lockdowns. And so we haven't done any follow-up, but that would be very interesting to see where things are now as of March, well, now May 2022, to see, you know, have things moved back? Are we still moving towards more online content, or is it hybrid? I wonder what the answer would be.
So here's a question, looks like for Karen and Brittany. Were staff compensated for more work?
Yeah, we did not find evidence of extra compensation. No, Brittany's shaking her head. No, no, it was by and large, it was some kind of interesting and scary to me qualitative comments from people as far as you know, it was massive you know, retirements happening and people having to pick up the slack. We even had gosh, at least 1 or 2 of people actually having colleagues pass away and having to suddenly pivot. And that was one of these things, you know, just doing research and you just don't really think about, you know, I don't know. I didn't, you know, you're putting out questions and then it's getting really the human side of it. And that's why I personally love to do a mixed method study. And it's one thing to put out, you know, survey questions and it's just kind of like cut and dry, right? You know, answering this, but when you get people's qualitative responses and really writing about their experiences and that really human side coming through and the frustration, the pain people were experiencing, the overload and the burnout that really came through. And we tried to pull out some of the more salient comments like that and put it into the paper and really give a voice to what people went through because and that's one thing, you know, we had started this research, our team, we had been working on a project like a year before COVID happened. And we kind of had gone down the road with that as far as, you know, online librarianship, and then COVID happened. And we said, hey, we want to adjust and look at this because we wanted to take this snapshot in time and kind of put it in a paper. And we don't want to forget these things of what people want. And I think in the year since we gathered the data, and right, things have changed so much and we are in this new normal, but putting it into a paper and having people's comments kind of live on as like a snapshot of where we were, that was very important to us, to give a voice to EBSS members like that, and what we were all going through, and that, you know, we don't want to forget.
Great, thank you. And Jade, I saw that you responded to one of the questions. And so if one of the other ones you didn't respond to, please feel free to do that. There was, do you support doctoral students working on evidence synthesis projects at all? And then are you seeing increasing demand for systematic reviews with the launch of your formal service?
Yes, we are seeing increasing demand, and I've done no outreach yet. So it's just word of mouth, one professor saying, oh, I did this, or, you know, a doctoral student. We do offer the service to doctoral students, as you can see with Sarah. However, we will not do it as part of their dissertation work. I did have a lot of students right off the bat that wanted it to be their chapter 2. And ethically, we can't do that because I'm doing the methods, right? So therefore, but we are, every week I get more and more interest on campus, and I purposely have not done outreach yet. I want to make sure that the team and we have the capacity. I'm just going on word of mouth, and I'm stretched pretty thin with 13 of them at one time. And I think I answered, I think I answered both, right?
Yes, thank you, Jade. So Karen and Brittany, and I'm reading these questions just so that they're recorded for the actual recording, since they won't see the chat. Were gift cards, staff professional development, massages, or extra perks given as compensation for the forced stress on staff?
Yeah, Brittany, what do you think? I think those are all great ideas, but I didn't see that. Even just something like professional development would have been nice, and we did not see a lot of that happening. Now, I saw things I did a lot of the literature review, and I was impressed internationally. There was a lot more professional development going on. I remember specifically papers from India where they were doing massive professional development, you know, to bring people up to speed to accommodate this rapid shift to online librarianship. And I was really impressed, but I don't recall any of that from our findings. Do you, Brittany?
No, we didn't ask specifically about any sort of compensation, but in the open-ended questions, it was the answers were mostly just about the overload of work that people were seeing. Nobody mentioned any sort of compensation for that.
Looks like we have another question for Brittany and Karen. Are you able to apply any of these findings to work and staff at your own institutions?
That's a good question. I manage a staff of 4. I don't have professional librarians. I have all staff, and it's, I think for me, and like I alluded to before, just you know, just kind of remembering what we all went through as people, and you know, just trying to be patient and kind in what people are going through behind the scenes on a daily basis. It kind of helped bring those things home. But I, you know, unfortunately not in the position to give extra compensation. There are things, you know, professional development that we work on just, you know, in our work. My staff aren't really having to move to the online librarianship task as much as I am personally.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. We only have 5. We have 2 librarians and 3 staff in our education library, and it was mostly the other education librarian and myself that were taking the brunt of the online kind of requests that we got. But I did see some similar things myself with the faculty connections and the faculty requests that we got that our participants saw. And so I have made some changes with the way I communicate with faculty and the collaborations that we have now that came from, inspired from some of this work. So, but yeah, we definitely have been very aware of the burnout situation, and especially paying attention to what our staff are going through, since we only have 3 in the building, and we try to make sure that everybody gets their time off, gets their breaks and things like that. So just trying to be very aware of what's going on. That I think also, spoke a little bit from our findings.
Great, thank you both. And we had a question in chat, which looks like Jade answered. It was, how do you, 13 SRs is a lot. How do you manage this increase in workload? Is there any reluctance at your institution to provide this service? And Jade answered, yes, some librarians do not participate at all, and great organizational skills combined with templates. We have another question for Jade and Sarah. Are you seeing any interest in systematic reviews in the arts and humanities? Locally, we're hearing about interest in the sciences, education, and policy sciences, but not much.
I have not had a lot in arts. I do have some in humanities, and it mostly is social sciences education at the beginning. But now as word gets out, as I mentioned, I'm in computer sciences and physics. So even though that's an education related topic, because it's about an inventory, which they give freshman physics students. So it's really about diversity and bias in the test, but it is from the physics department. But from all the literature and reading a recent article on the proliferation of systematic reviews and scoping reviews, they foresee this as a regular task that librarians of the future will do, just as we do research and reference and instruction as part of our duties to the institution. So I foresee it, but there is a reluctance with some librarians, and that's why we set it up the way we did. We also had a lot of people leave during COVID. So we have a lot of fresh new librarians coming in, and it's part of the interview process now, is they ask them if they have done or are interested in doing systematic reviews. So we're gauging that with new hires to make sure it's people who want to contribute to the service to build capacity. But from the literature is saying that it's exploding across all disciplines. I just personally have not seen it yet in arts. Humanities, though, yes.
And I have a question for Sarah. It's a more practical question from a librarian's perspective, but what has your experience been working with librarians as collaborators on your research and kind of within this systematic review process? I think for so many of us, the work that we do with scholars and researchers is maybe at the topic selection or the lit review stage, helping them find the sources. So what has been your experience having a librarian as a collaborator, and potentially what advice would you have for librarians who want to support researchers more throughout that their whole process?
Actually, after I shared, I was thinking about the frequency that we met, because it's like high frequency or high touch services, and it definitely was. I mean, we met weekly mostly through the entire process, and we each had deliverables at for the next meeting, and so it really. And it went quick. Like, we got stuff done pretty quickly because we both had our tasks and we both were working at it. And we had a few other team, like on the paper, there's a few other people who, they reviewed abstracts and full texts and like also engaged with covenants a little bit, but it was mostly Jade and I like driving the thing and like writing. And yeah, it was like really, it felt really equal, and I felt really supported. And so it really truly was like a collaboration, not just like Jade giving me advice of like what to do, so it was super helpful to have someone like willing to actually like do the work too, because it takes time and energy to like engage and do that. So
great, thank you. Any other questions, everyone?
This is Lee. I have maybe one more question for Jade. Just given what Sarah said about the amount of time that her team, about the amount of time it took for her team, weekly meetings. When you're recruiting a librarian into doing this work, a librarian who is likely to have other responsibilities and duties, how are you all assisting them with managing the workload for this and their own time? And I know you said that right now they're doing it with you, but also imagining if they were doing it in the future without you, what do they do with their other duties and responsibilities to make room for this?
And that is something that I met with all the associate deans about recently, and to make sure that we had support across the board. So if in fact a librarian says they have too much on their plate and that they want to do it, but they don't know how they'll have time for it, they work with their reviewing officer, and we may give them off the reference shifts or out of our writing program instruction, things that all of the librarians contribute to. Now we're large. I have 78 librarians at USC. So it's a very, very large system, as you can imagine, spread out across, we're embedded within the departments we work in. So while my office is in a library, because I was in administration, our social science librarians are all within the departments. So our psychology librarian office is in the psychology department. Social work librarians are in the social work department, which help. So I am able to give them that. The other thing is when you look at, again, I'm still building out the LibGuide, but if you look at just my slides, you'll see that there are areas where I allow the librarians to step in or out of, and that's why it's so important to have that team commitment from that intake meeting of knowing how many people the principal PI, or generally I'm a co-PI on these, but the co-PI, that they have research assistants that can do some of the screening and data extraction, especially in a case where I do not have subject expertise, or the librarian may not have subject expertise in that area. Even if they're the subject expert, it might be niche. So the one way I did it is a very flexible program for the librarians of when they can step in and out of duties. Clearly, we have to be heavily involved and upload up front with the strategic systematic searching and the thesauri and picking databases and developing search terms, running those searches. But I put the results into that tracking sheet because of the caps, and Sarah and I and the RAs, we all were running through and uploading into Zotero because the searches had been run. So, and then there are the points of the screening, data extraction, quality assurance. Depending on the librarian's comfort, they make it clear upfront whether they will be participating in that portion or not. And then writing, Sarah and I were really writing partners on this one, but some I only write the research methods portion and the bias and weakness section, and the team does the rest. So I have it kind of set up a la carte with a lot of flexibility. So librarians who want to do it with less time investment can, but I need to make sure that the team, the disciplinary team, has the manpower to be able to pull these off. So it can't just be Sarah and I do this and we expect it to be done in a short amount of time. And I do have a methods section template. I wrote 3 or 4 of these and worked on combining the best of them. I took the ones that have been published. And so I do have a template for that. Someone asked in chat. And again, I will, by the end of next week, all of the templates will be up on the LibGuide. This is all really new stuff for us. So I have all the templates. I just have to put them up on the LibGuide. And I have another presentation, another virtual presentation this week. So I've been focused on those things, but yes, and those will be available. The method section draft outline where you just plug in the databases and the numbers, and it makes the process go much quicker if you have everything templated out. And did I answer your question, Lee?
Yes, thank you very much, Jade.
Okay, good.
All right, any final questions as we get close to 12:30? Okay. So let me share my screen one final time. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and thank you to our 2 great presentations and our 4 presenters. Those were all amazing. Here's the link. I put it in chat to provide feedback on today's event. If you have any further questions, you can, of course, contact the presenters directly, or you can contact Tamara Rhodes, the chair, or me at the email addresses provided here. And we hope to see you all again at other EBSS events and at next year's forum. Please start thinking about what you might submit for next year. Thanks, everyone.